I never thought I'd be the guy whose wife cheated on him. That was the kind of thing that happened to other men, men who weren't paying attention, men who took their wives for granted, men who missed the warning signs. I wasn't one of them. Or so I thought. Veronica and I had been married for 8 years. She was beautiful, sharp, and ambitious, always wanting more from life. That was one of the things I loved about her. When she told me she wanted to go back to school for a second degree, I was supportive. "Do it," I said. "I'll handle things here." I took on extra hours at work so she wouldn't have to worry about finances. I picked up more chores around the house. I wanted her to succeed. At first, everything seemed normal. She studied late, spent weekends on assignments, and talked about her professors and classmates like they were just names in passing. But as the months went on, something shifted. She became distracted, irritable. Her phone was always glued to her hand, and when I walked into a room, she'd angle the screen away. If I asked about school, she gave vague answers, like she didn't want to talk about it. Then the lies started. One evening, she told me she was staying late at the library for a group project. I believed her. But later that night, I found a receipt in her purse from an upscale hotel across town, dated that very evening. My chest tightened. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just a mistake. But the feeling wouldn't go away. I started paying closer attention. Her phone would vibrate late at night with messages she never let me see. She'd leave the house dressed up more than usual for study sessions. And worst of all, she started treating me like an afterthought, like I was just another piece of furniture in our home. I wasn't going to be a fool. I needed proof. So I got smart. I placed a small GPS tracker in her car. It was discreet, barely noticeable. I also installed a security camera in my home office, where she often claimed to have online meetings. It wasn't paranoia, it was self-defense. A week later, the truth hit me like a sledgehammer. Veronica wasn't at the library that night. She wasn't at a friend's house either. She was at the university. And she wasn't alone. I sat in my car across the street from the university, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded as I watched her car parked in the faculty lot. It was well past 10 p.m. She had texted me 2 hours ago, "Long night, babe. This group project is killing me." Lies. Through the tracking app, I saw she had been at this location for nearly an hour. If she were really in a study session, she'd be in the student library, not the professor's building. My stomach twisted as I considered my next move. Did I want to see it for myself? Did I want undeniable proof? The answer was yes. I got out of the car, my breath visible in the cold night air. My mind was a blur of emotions, anger, disbelief, fear, but I kept walking. I moved through the shadows, keeping to the side of the building. I knew the layout well, I had visited her here before, sat in the back of the classroom once while she gave a presentation. But this wasn't a presentation. I reached the classroom window. The blinds weren't completely closed. And that's when I saw them. Veronica. And Professor Daniel Thompson. They weren't grading papers. They weren't discussing coursework. They were wrapped around each other, lost in their own world. My body went numb. I should have been furious. I should have punched the glass, stormed in, confronted them. But I just stood there, frozen, my breath shallow. Then I saw something that made my stomach churn. Veronica laughed. She laughed. Right after they were done, she sat on the desk, running her fingers through her hair, completely at ease. And then she said something to him, something that hit me harder than the betrayal itself. "My husband has no idea. He's so clueless, it's almost sad." I backed away from the window, my entire body trembling. Not just from anger. Not just from betrayal. But from the clarity of it all. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was deliberate, calculated. She was playing me for a fool. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Revenge wasn't just an option. It was a necessity. I spent the rest of the night driving aimlessly, my mind replaying what I had seen over and over again. The classroom. The professor. Her laughter. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the rage had settled into something far more dangerous, calculated coldness. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to scream. That's what Veronica expected. She thought she had me figured out, thought I would either lash out in blind anger or be too weak to do anything. She was wrong. I took a deep breath and called David, my best friend since high school. He was the kind of guy who always knew how to fix things. More importantly, he was a tech genius. He picked up on the second ring. "What's up, man?" "I need your help," I said, my voice steady. There was a pause. David knew me too well. He must have heard the edge in my tone. "Where are you?" "Home." "I'm coming over." 15 minutes later, David was sitting in my living room, listening as I laid it all out: Veronica, the professor, the classroom. His face darkened with every word. "That's disgusting, Alfred." "In the classroom?" "That's just next-level disrespect." "I know. So what's the plan?" I looked him in the eye and said, "I want the whole world to see exactly who she is." David's lips curled into a slow grin. "I have just the thing." For the next 3 days, I went about my life as if nothing had happened. I still kissed Veronica on the cheek when I left for work. I still asked her about her classes. I still played my role as the oblivious husband. She had no idea I was already 5 steps ahead of her. David and I spent hours hacking into the university's online portal. It wasn't hard, David had done this sort of thing before. Through the system, we found something beautiful. Veronica and Professor Daniel Thompson were scheduled to give a presentation together in one of the university's largest lecture halls. A packed hall, hundreds of students, faculty members, even the dean. And the best part? They planned to use the same classroom where their little rendezvous had taken place. Perfect. The night before their big presentation, David and I snuck onto campus. With a few keystrokes, he accessed the lecture hall's audiovisual system and uploaded a very special video into the queue. The same video I had recorded from the classroom window. Veronica and her professor, caught in the act. Undeniable. Unforgivable. Unforgettable. David glanced at me as the file finished loading. "You sure about this?" I exhaled slowly. She called me clueless. "I just want to return the favor." David chuckled. "Fair enough." The lecture hall buzzed with energy. Hundreds of students packed the seats, laptops open, ready to take notes. Some leaned forward, eager to absorb whatever knowledge the guest speakers, Professor Daniel Thompson and my soon-to-be ex-wife Veronica, had prepared for them. I sat quietly in the back row, my hands steady, my heart slow and deliberate. Veronica stood at the podium, radiating confidence. She wore her favorite navy blue blazer, the one she always said made her look like she belonged in the academic world. Her blonde hair was curled perfectly, her makeup flawless. If you didn't know any better, you'd think she was an accomplished scholar, a respected figure in academia. But I knew better. And in a matter of minutes, so would everyone else. Professor Daniel Thompson adjusted his tie and cleared his throat, the very picture of professional decorum. I almost laughed. If only his students knew the same hands that graded their essays were the same hands that had been all over my wife in an empty classroom. He tapped the laptop on the podium and smiled. "Good afternoon, everyone. Today, Veronica and I will be presenting." The screen flickered. There was a pause. Then it began. At first, no one understood what they were seeing. The screen had gone dark for a brief moment, then a grainy video appeared. The angle was from outside a classroom window. The lighting was dim, but clear enough. And then came the sounds. A low, sultry laugh. Veronica's laugh. Confused whispers spread through the hall like wildfire. Students leaned forward, frowning at the unexpected footage. Then the image sharpened, and there she was. Veronica. Sitting on the professor's desk. Legs wrapped around him. The sound of lips meeting, the rustle of fabric. The unmistakable rhythm of movement. Professor Thompson's moan. Then, Veronica's voice, mocking, cruel, dripping with arrogance. My husband has no idea. He's so clueless, it's almost sad. Silence. Not a single cough. Not a single whisper. For the first time in her life, Veronica was truly speechless. Then, chaos. Gasps. A strangled, "Oh my God," from somewhere in the front. Someone burst into laughter, unable to hold it in. Phones whipped out in every direction. The students who had been silent seconds ago were now filming, whispering frantically, capturing every second of her humiliation. Veronica's entire world collapsed in that moment. Her face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint. Her hands trembled as she reached for the laptop, but the video kept playing. She looked around, wild-eyed, desperate. I could see it all in her expression, the shock, the horror, the sinking realization that her life as she knew it was over. Professor Thompson wasn't much better. He stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, as if his brain had short-circuited. Then, panic. Shut it off. Shut it off. He lunged for the laptop, hammering the keyboard, yanking at the power cord. Nothing worked. The video continued. Every sound, every movement, every whispered betrayal played out for the entire room to see. One of the students, a guy in the front row, laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. Yo, that's Professor Thompson. More laughter. Then the real damage came. A woman in the third row, mid-40s, dressed in business attire, stood up slowly. Her hands clutched the edges of her seat, her knuckles white. I recognized her immediately. Professor Thompson's wife. His now ex-wife. She turned to her husband, her face twisted in sheer, unfiltered rage. Are you kidding me, Daniel? In a classroom? Students gasped again, this time from pure entertainment. She strode up to the front of the lecture hall, and before anyone could stop her, slapped him across the face. The sound echoed through the entire room. A collective "Bodhich" rippled through the students, some clapping, some cheering. Veronica was in full meltdown mode. She looked around, tears welling in her eyes. She grabbed Professor Thompson's sleeve, pulling him toward the exit. We need to go. We have to leave. But there was no escaping this. This was live. This was permanent. Someone's laptop had been streaming the lecture. I already knew by the time she got to the door, the video would be all over the university forums, social media, and even local news. And then, her eyes met mine. Across the sea of students, across the laughter and the recording phones, she locked onto me. Her face twisted. Rage. Fear. Humiliation. She knew. She knew. I tilted my head slightly. And then I smiled. That was the final blow. She ran. She bolted out of the room, dragging the disgraced professor with her. The moment they disappeared, the lecture hall erupted. Laughter, cheers, students high-fiving each other, memes already being created. Somewhere in the crowd, I heard a voice say, "That was the greatest thing I've ever seen." I picked up my bag, took one last look at the now empty podium, and calmly walked out. I had nothing else to say. She had said enough for both of us. The lecture hall still buzzed with energy as I walked out, the echoes of laughter and whispered conversations bouncing off the walls behind me. I didn't need to look back to know that Veronica and Professor Thompson were ruined. The video was already everywhere, on students' phones, on social media, probably even in university emails by now. It was over. I stepped into the cool afternoon air, breathing in deep. Freedom. That's what it felt like. For months, I had unknowingly shared my life, my home, my trust with a woman who had been laughing behind my back. She thought she had me fooled, thought I was clueless. But now the whole world saw who she really was. I unlocked my car and slid into the driver's seat, my mind finally quiet for the first time in weeks. As I started the engine, my phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Veronica. The first call. Then a second. Then a flood of text messages. Veronica, Alfred, we need to talk. Please. Veronica, you don't understand what you've done. Veronica, call me. Please, babe. I can explain. I smirked. Explain. Explain what, exactly? That she had lied to my face, betrayed me, humiliated me, and only felt sorry now because she had been caught. I turned the phone over, ignoring the rest of the messages. She was nothing to me now. And she was about to find out just how much. When I got home, I packed everything that belonged to her into garbage bags. Clothes, shoes, makeup, all the expensive skincare products she used to obsess over. I didn't just dump them outside. That would have been too easy. I drove to Goodwill and donated every single thing. If she wanted her stuff back, she could go buy it like everyone else. Then, I changed the locks. By the time Veronica arrived, still in her ruined, disheveled business attire, she couldn't even get into the house. I watched from the upstairs window as she pounded on the door, her face red, eyes wild. Alfred. Open this door. I didn't move. I just stood there, watching. She banged on the door again, then tried the handle. Locked. Her phone was pressed to her ear, probably calling me again. But mine was off. Alfred, please, she screamed. We can fix this. I didn't mean it. Please let me explain. I could have walked downstairs. Could have told her exactly what I thought of her. Could have thrown all her mistakes in her face, one by one. But instead, I just let her stand there. Because silence was louder than anything I could ever say. She deserved this moment. The realization that she had lost everything. After nearly 20 minutes of shouting, sobbing, begging, she finally slumped against the door, defeated. And then she left. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt completely, utterly at peace. It didn't take long for everything to come crashing down around her. Professor Thompson. Fired. The university had zero tolerance for inappropriate relationships between faculty and students, especially not ones caught on camera. His wife filed for divorce immediately. She wasn't just humiliated, she was out for blood. And from what I heard, she took everything. As for Veronica, the university conducted an investigation, and guess what? Turns out, she had violated school policy, too. Even though she was a student, she had been working on campus in a student-instructor role, which meant she wasn't just some innocent party. She was kicked out. No degree. No credits transferred. Nothing. Her reputation. Completely destroyed. Students mocked her online. Some made memes. Others whispered behind her back everywhere she went. One clip from the presentation had even gone viral, the exact moment she realized what was playing behind her. The horror. The panic. The devastation. It was brutal. But it was exactly what she deserved. I wasted no time. Divorce papers were filed within a week. She tried to fight it, of course. Tried to cry her way out of it. "Alfred, don't do this. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. You're my husband. I still love you." Love? She didn't even know the meaning of the word. My lawyer had a field day. Between the infidelity, the public humiliation, and the undeniable proof, I didn't just win. I took everything. The house? Mine. The savings account she thought she was entitled to? Frozen. She walked away with nothing but her shame. And that? That was enough. The last time I saw Veronica was 3 months after the video incident. She showed up outside my house, looking pathetic. Tired. Broken. "Alfred," she whispered, tears in her eyes. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, arms crossed, waiting for her to finish whatever desperate speech she had prepared. I don't have anywhere to go," she admitted. I raised an eyebrow. "Not my problem. I miss you. I miss us." Us? There was no us. She destroyed that the moment she decided to betray me. I tilted my head slightly, just like I had in the lecture hall. And then I shut the door in her face. I didn't need to say a damn thing. Because, in that moment, she knew. She had finally lost the only man who ever truly loved her. And I had already moved on. 6 months later, I was happier than I had been in years. I had refurnished the house, got rid of every last trace of Veronica. The bedroom felt lighter. The living room felt bigger. It was as if removing her had cleansed the entire space. And me? I was finally free. One day, David sent me a link to a new viral video. It was Veronica. Sitting at a dingy bartender job, looking miserable. Someone had recognized her, recorded a video, and uploaded it with the caption, "From cheating in classrooms to serving drinks, karma's undefeated." I watched it once. Then I laughed, really laughed. Not out of spite. Not out of anger. But because, for the first time in a long time, life felt good. And karma? Karma was beautiful.